Right, as it is now 10:30, welcome to everybody to this meeting of the South West London Integrated Care Board. Bit of housekeeping to start. I do have to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded. Recording will be uploaded onto the ICB website after this meeting. Also for people around the table who are board members or presenting, could you please switch on your mics when you speak, as this will allow us then to have a proper record of the meeting. I will need reminding probably every 5 minutes to do that, but I'm sure I can trust everyone else to remember on it. We have apologies today from Anne Rainsbury, from Jamal Butt, from Dinah McClanahan, from Joe Farrer and from Andreas Kirsch and from Omar Daniel. We have Neil McDowell, who is joining us on behalf of Dinah. So thank you, Neil, for making yourself available today. We are quora despite those absences, so decisions can be made. Declarations of interest. First of all, a register of declared interest included in the pack of papers. But does anyone have anything in addition to add to that register or any changes to make? I am not seeing any response to that, so I'm assuming that is tickety-boo. Minutes of the last meeting. Minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of April are included for approval. I'm not going to go through a page turn. Does everyone agree they are an accurate reflection of the meeting? Yes. So the board approves the minutes. We also include in there, the action log, that's been updated. All the actions have been closed. In terms of standing items, decisions made in other meetings. Ben.
Thanks, Chair. So the paper sets out the decisions that have been made by board in its part two meeting since we last met. The decisions noted in the paper were made in part two either because they were time sensitive, because they were of a confidential nature, for example, discussions that had impacts on our staff due to consultation, or because they were commercially sensitive. Otherwise, Richard, I will take the paper as read.
Okay, any questions for Ben on that? Okay, that is fine. Right, so by way of introduction for me for the meeting, now I guess we can sort of split the meeting into 3 or 4 chunks today. We're going to kick off with a focus on Merton, and we're going to start doing this at all our board meetings in the future, where each board meeting will kick off with a more detailed look at one of our boroughs. So we make sure that as an organisation, we're not just thinking some amorphous thing called South West London, but we're actually focused on the places within South West London. So we'll kick off with that. I am afraid then we are pretty heavily for this meeting into governance stuff, as I would call it. Now, there's a mix here of there are a number of legal and other requirements that we have to meet, that we have to cover off. And we have got here a section, first of all, on our sort of future governance framework and ways of operating. Now, looking at this, and everyone on the board has had a chance to read through it, inwardly digest, and put a red pen where they wanted to put a red pen on this. It may look a bit boring to people, and yeah, frankly, sort of is a bit boring in some ways, but it's really important stuff because this is the framework that allows us to operate and make decisions. It's not just about the specific legal requirements, it's also about the ways we work as a board, how we reach decisions. So, although it may appear a bit dull, it is really, really important. So we've got that as a chunk after the Merton paper. We have then got the annual report and accounts to approve, which Neil will do for us, and then we get into the board committee updates and reports. Now, finally from me, before I kick off on Merton, because of the governance work and the annual report and accounts, this is a very, very, very long pack of papers. I would hope that in future the PAC will be nowhere near as long as this, and that's one of the reasons for trying to get this governance framework started, getting this right at the start. It will allow us then to really focus down the key issues and perhaps have some sort of more succinct papers that will form the base of discussion. So this is a bit of an establishment meeting in some ways. So that's probably all I want to say by way of intro. I am going to go sort of straight into the Merton place. I don't know whether, Andrew, you want to say anything on this, or for me to hand straight over to Mark and colleagues.
I think you said it, Chair. It's just a heads up to board members as to the future. So orientating ourselves in the places we are is something we want to do as a population-focused organisation. So it's important in that way. Secondly, and I haven't seen the presentation, so I say this nervously, we are interested in sort of wider determinants and what happens to people in a borough, not just what happens when they enter a hospital. And so for those two reasons, we sort of unapologetically ask colleagues to talk about their places.
Okay, thank you. So Merton is our first one, so Mark and colleagues, over to you.
Hello, so I think we've got kind of 25 minutes to do this.
We've got a total of 30 minutes for this slot, but we want a chance for people to be able to ask questions and comment as well. Much as they will enjoy listening to you, a bit of time for questions.
Fantastic. So I will try to project my voice. So when we were first asked to do this, we ran off. Fabulous. We ran off doing, this is where we're at with non-electives, this is where we're at with our transformation plans for outpatients, GP access, etc. But actually that is available for anyone if they want to have it, because we did finish the presentation. But what we wanted to really give you was a flavour of what Merton is about. I'm lucky to be joined by David Gentles, who's the head of sport and leisure. And if you didn't know already, Merton is the borough of sport. So our presentation is very much about physical activity and the prevention agenda that is very, very important to our to all Merton partners. That said, I just wanted to kind of contextualise it. So, with the sporting phrase, Merton is a borough of two halves. Yeah. Actually, we have a very affluent area in the west of Merton, and then in the east of Merton, we have the core 20+5 and really some deprived communities, which align to kind of our Croydon experience as well. We have, with our health and well-being board strategy and our local health and care plan, we have focused in three areas: start well, live well and age well. But absolutely, just some of the stats here, I won't go through them all in detail, but actually, whether it's tooth decay in children, obesity in children is 30% higher in our most deprived areas than it is in our more affluent areas. You will see that actually in the Merton wards, the deprived areas are actually where we have poorer outcomes for children generally. We've also got 1 in 3 children are not achieving their development that they should do, and again it tends to be the east-west divide. Live well. I think 1 in 4 are likely to adults are likely to experience mental health issues and concerns. Alcohol abuse, substance abuse is also very prevalent and has a huge cost to both health and social care. The social economic factors that play are the wider determinants of health, jobs, physical environment, tobacco use. And again, what we are seeing, particularly in things like long-term conditions, is actually, again, a higher prevalence in the east of the borough than we do see in the west of the borough. I promise. Oh, what have I done? I'm back. Thank you. I pressed the wrong button. Age well. Again, we have that borough divide. But actually, what we're trying to do is really promote active aging. So actually, people who are entering older people, such as myself, encouraging them to do physical activity, to actually partake in, and it's not sport, it's physical activity. So whether it's cycling, whether it's walking, whether it's joining a gym, it's a wide range of different things that we're trying to achieve. The thing about older adults is that one of the key areas is about social isolation and depression, and that's one of the things, again, in our health and wellbeing plan that we need to that we are trying to address. On the wider determinants of health, Merton is very keen on making sure that people have open space, green spaces to get to. And that, again, we're seeing an east-west divide. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's really, really important that we start to address the east of the borough health challenges, as well as a kind of universal offer for all. We are seeing cost of living, fuel poverty and unhealthy food environments, again, really prevalent in the east. But what we want to do is through community assets and building community responses to ensure that actually we're starting to address that. Now that's the kind of dry stats bit, and we will circulate this. But what we wanted to do was kind of then just focus on Merton as the borough of sport, and David is going to take us through a presentation and hopefully a bit of a film, giving the technology away.
Yeah, here we go. Famous last words of the film. Anyway, thanks for inviting me today. It's always delighted to be here, and particularly when I get told that it will get dull and boring after I finish, which is often not the case. Can we click forward, see if the video works? Yeah, let's go. Fingers crossed.
There is a huge power in sport in bringing people together. The benefits to people feeling better, to being able to clear your mind and focus on things that are really important to you. You just can't put a price on that. Let's open up the borough, let's bring people into the borough, and let's really push that sporting agenda.
Exercise, it gives you a release. It makes you feel better. It keeps you motivated. You get to socialise. You know, you make friends.
We helped support the big sports day that Merton ran this year, and it was absolutely incredible to see the amount of impact and how many people came out and the amount of sports that came together. It was just inspiring to see that many people in one borough being able to do so much.
I think sport brings everybody together one way or another. There are people around that have got something in common, and bringing that together and bringing the best out of everybody is what it's all about. Being involved in improving people's lives, I don't think there could be anything better than that.
I love how girls play football because it makes a difference in the world, because my mum told me that girls didn't play football when she was young, and I thought that wasn't fair, and I've always loved football, so now I can play football. I've got a new opportunity now at Wildcats.
We're all really good friends and we all really enjoy it. Wildcats like to encourage more girls to play.
This generation, we're hoping to get them more active, and we're hoping to inspire them so that they know that they have that opportunity in football. When I was younger, it was very hard as a female to find a pathway and to actually know where I could go and what direction I could take in football. Whereas now we're trying to show them that there is pathways as a professional player, as a coach, volunteering, mentoring, behind the scenes. So we're showing them that there is lots of opportunity for women in football, and that no option and no door is shut.
In every corner of the borough there is something going on in terms of sport. We are a great convener and a great promoter to encourage and let people know actually what is just on their doorstep. And that's why we introduced free swimming for under 16s and over 65s. That's to remove the barrier of having to pay for swimming, particularly in a cost of living crisis. So it's how we can use our power and the facilities we have to make it easier for people just to get off the couch and into their parks and green spaces. There's a lot going on in our borough, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our libraries are fundamental to us delivering borough of sport, as well as our green and open spaces.
The Merton Libraries partnership, when it started, was really the first of its kind. One of the things that we can do is provide expertise in exercise and health.
Exercises which really helped me, because I've got very, very bad feet and bad knees, and I find that this really does help me an awful lot. It definitely works. Plus it's fun.
Doing this exercise motivates me to keep on going. I'm 78 now, and I have a feeling I'll still got a long way to go.
I love exercise because it helps all the movements of the body. I'm 89 and exercise helps me to move.
Exercise is a human right to be able to do it, so we're really happy to be able to come into the community and provide that.
It's been an amazing experience because that age group is like the missing gap, and you will go to most gyms and centres and not find these kind of things going on. So the fact that we got it is amazing. Amazing.
I've got a passion for sport, a passion to help people. For us to be doing this in Merton, I was so excited when I heard about it, and I said, can I please help?
Lorna encapsulates everything that we're trying to do with Merton. She grew up in Mitcham. She is a former Commonwealth athlete who has been all around the world competing for Team GB and has come back to Mitcham to live and to carry on. And actually, it's finding those people in our borough that are passionate, bringing them all to the front to say, we're serious about this, we want to help, let's work together, let's see what you can bring to the table, and let's see what we can bring to the table for the benefit of everybody in our borough.
All I want to do is to give back so that the athletes that I help and bring through can hold their head up high and feel as if they've achieved something.
I'm extremely proud that the council is really throwing its weight behind being London's borough of sport, and we can only do that through partnership. So we would really encourage and welcome everybody to think about how they can be part of this fantastic journey around putting sport high up on the agenda. The power of sport is phenomenal. There is just so much good that can come from us really embracing this ambition.
There's nothing quite like getting in and participating in something to make that difference, because every time you do, you're improving the lot for somebody somewhere along the line, and that is a wonderful thing, never mind what it does for yourself.
So we have the infrastructure, we have the facilities, we've got the heritage. It's now making sure that all of our residents can benefit from the power of sport.
I've always thought Merton is the borough of sport, really and truthfully. I genuinely believe that is the truth. We are the London Borough of Sport.
Great. Hopefully that gives you a really good flavour of what we set out to achieve 3 years ago. A little bit about my story. So I've been a lifelong fan of sport. I still play sport at weekends, hanging on cricket. It was something that I feel very privileged that I've had the chance in the last 3 years to work to Merton, because you'll all know that funding for local authorities has gone down, and for Merton to have a priority that works across the whole entire council is something that I bought into, and it took quite a lot to get me from my previous role at London Sport, where I was at for 16 years, to come to Merton. So as you can see from here, one of the things that we're setting out to achieve is to get people more active. Now, when I first came in, the first thing I did was to listen to a lot of people in the borough. We met with over 80 organisations, and 3 real key pillars came out of what the challenges are that we've kind of focused on. First one was around low quality facilities. So not unique to Merton, but if you go to our parks, if you go to our spaces, you'll find pavilions that are run down. You know, you're lucky to get a warm shower. If you've, got individual cubicles, that's unheard of. So getting better quality facilities was kind of a number one priority. Second one was around inactive people being connected to activities. So people that are inactive, maybe moved to Merton, maybe have long-term health conditions, they don't go to the RFU website to find out what there might be on the rugby website. So what we did was we worked with the Get Active model, setting up a bespoke kind of activity finder in the borough to help people connect with opportunities, but also those sports clubs that maybe struggle to get the reach of new communities and inactive groups connecting each other. So that has gone very well, and you'll see later on some stats about 50,000 plus usages on people clicking on that. Then the third one, which was really exacerbated by COVID, was, community sport in this country is underpinned by volunteers. Now, COVID gave an opportunity for people to kind of get off that volunteer cycle. very strange in this country, which is unique to this country in my experience, is that the sports sector is very wary about people wanting to volunteer in sports clubs. I don't know why it is, but if you're not a parent or if you're not connected and someone knows you, people look on you with suspicion about why would this person want to come and volunteer in my sports club. So it's always got a very limited cycle in terms of, if your kid starts, swimming, like my kid started swimming at 7 or 8, you've probably got 6 or 7 years where you've got a parent as a volunteer, and then you have to start the whole cycle again. Now, I'm a little bit different. My kids retired from swimming 6 years ago, and I'm still on the committee and a welfare officer at swimming club. So obviously I've done something wrong somewhere, but we need to open up opportunities and encourage people to volunteer their time in sports clubs. Professional workforce is also, that COVID kind of cycle really affected the professional workforce as well, where people who were sports coaches, lifeguards, they went to work in Tesco's, they had to get other jobs. Now we are struggling to kind of go back to that cycle and recruit young people that are maybe coming out of university, and also looking at the other end of the scale where, people that might have semi-retired or people have a bit more time in their hands. So that's been a real kind of key challenge. So one of the measures, go back quickly, just to touch on this. I won't go through all the individual stats, but one thing that's very interesting. So recently, hopefully you'll all know about the Active Lives surveys it's basically Sport England's national tool where all over the country they compare, people's activity levels, membership of sports clubs, attitudes to sport and physical activity. So there's an adult survey that's done through random selection up to 500 people per borough, and then you get an annual report. Now, interestingly, with the Children and Young People survey, whilst we're very proud that Merton's activity levels have gone up, a very interesting stat came this year. Whilst activity levels for young people have gone up, enjoyment has gone down. Now, we can always have a long debate about that, and we can't cover that in 30 minutes. But I think, from my experience, people are starting to understand the benefits of sport and being active more so than it just being fun. Now, when I was young, I did sport for fun. I didn't care whether it was good for me or whether it was good for my health. But I think young people are thinking about body image, their own health and well-being. I have 2 kids, neither of them drink. I think the whole young people, the kind of sector of young people is kind of really changing. And I think, sport doesn't have to be fun for everyone, but I think people can see being active is beneficial. So that's just an interesting stat we picked up lately. Next slide. Very key to what we're trying to achieve is through getting investment. Councils have very limited budgets. My budget's very tiny. But what we've managed to do, that very small budget, is to get increased funding from external partners. So very proud later on, hopefully Mark's coming along, this play zone. And we talked about the issues about the divide between the East and the West. So a play zone is essentially what used to be called multi-use games area, multi-use sports area. So this is in Pollard's Hill. So the divide between the East and the West, there's lots of green space, lots of places for people to be active in the West. In the East, it's not like that at all. So this was a traditional school playground that after 4 o'clock, it was closed down, school holidays, it was closed down. What we managed to do is get 75% funding. So it cost the council about 70,000. We got 250 odd thousand from Football Foundation to build this facility, which will be the school's main playground in the daytime. But in the evenings and weekends, what's really key in Pollard's Hill and areas that Mark talked about where activity levels are lower, obesity is higher, is this will be a community facility that's available, very low cost for everyone in that community. Now, we've got funding from Football Foundation for 4 of these. 3 of them are going to be in the Pollard's Hill, Mitcham area. So hopefully these will be kind of game changers. Of course, you build it and people will come, but we need to think about how we're going to kind of create activators in those local communities that will make sure these are really thriving facilities. Again, underpinning what we're doing is providing more opportunities for people to be active. So you heard the leader talk about some of those things, like the Big Sports Day. We've funded or engaged with over 45 new initiatives, a lot of them focused around, the key priority groups, girls and women, people with disabilities, people on low incomes. And what I mentioned earlier on, we've had 50,000 visits from the activity finder. Now, you can't see when someone clicks on that whether they then track to being active, but visibility is really key for people to be active. Just one quick last stat. So in terms of brand recognition, Borough of Sport as a brand, hopefully, who's heard of Borough of Sport before? Put your hand up. Okay, there you go. That's not 40%, but yeah, Borough of Sport is in Merton, got a kind of good brand recognition. And then the last key point there, The health sector's been very good about measuring impact for a long time. Sport has been terrible. So what we've done is we've got a partnership with the LSBU working with a PhD student to really do a longitudinal 3-year study about the impact of all of these things, what they're doing in terms of engaging people and getting them more active. So that's a key piece of work that started about 8 months ago, and hopefully through the 3 years we can kind of track the real benefit that this has had. And then in terms of national recognition, so top one's quite important and really proud, is that we were a pilot for Sipford Health Foundation, and they said we're a leading example of preventative investment in local government in terms of the work that we're doing around this agenda. Also identified as a foundation for future councils. As I mentioned, this is a non-statutory service. A lot of councils, maybe the ones that you work with, have very small teams or don't have dedicated sport and physical activity teams. So we're very proud in Merton that we've got that. I've got a small team that are very passionate and active. And then we've started to get recognition in Parliament as well. I think we're done. We're done. If we can skip the video, there's a 2-minute video.
Never played netball in my life. Came along through a friend's recommendation, and it's the best thing I ever did. I absolutely love it. I've been waiting for this for such a long time, and it's on my doorstep, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
It's great. You learn a lot. Learning new skills. It's always good to learn something new.
You can always try. This is all about trying. It's not reaching perfection.
It's wonderful. It keeps us moving. The movement is such that we wouldn't have ever done it otherwise. By the time I get out here, I feel good. But now I do a bit here, stretch and sit down. Before I can't even sit down on the floor, get up.
Just being out and getting that mental health aspect of running has been really great. Just connecting with nature, people.
It's helped me with my mental health and meeting all these lovely, lovely people. So we are now friends.
Just knowing that someone is going to be here. And I'm not on my own. I'm not in this journey on my own.
It's so inclusive, non-judgmental and fun. Love it.
I think it's a good opportunity, and I think it also boosts your confidence to run your team for like Merton.
I think it's a great opportunity, especially for girls who are into team sports. I think it's just amazing.
Best of all, it's free. I mean, what more can you say about that? Then that's the Borough of Merton for you. It's free.
The run is free, so yeah, it's a good start of Monday morning, and then I think some people might put off if you have to pay for it, but it helps motivation.
The Kids Swim Pass is really good because it's free activity, it's good for their fitness, and it's a life skill.
It's just really good for your fitness, and it can calm you down if you're having a bad day.
Oh, it's been absolutely fantastic. I think it's a great opportunity. I've got a 5-year-old, so he can try lots and lots of different sports for free, get a feel for what he enjoys.
I'd say everything's pretty good. I like the food here, it looks pretty nice, and also I'm really looking forward to the zip line.
It was really fun, just playing against the different counties, just getting involved in the sport.
I think it's probably one of my favourite days of this year, and I really enjoyed it. Me too, it was really fun, and all the vibes were very good, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It made me feel a little like home. But the village is magnificent. The tournament was breathtaking. Having a blast. Would do it again in a heartbeat.
It's the best feeling, it really is. You actually feel a lot freer than you ever do.
Merton's a borough of sport, we're very lucky, and we want to keep it going.
Massive congratulations to the London Borough of Merton for their Borough of Sport campaign. You've managed to get 8,000 children, young people and adults more active, and that's just the start. So keep going so we can build a healthier, happier Merton.
But that's what it's about, not just exercising, but exercising and having fun. That way it makes it easy and you want to do more. So yes, bring it on.
Great. I have a first year impact report. I haven't got enough for everyone, but if anyone wants to take it with you, do so. Get in touch with me, and then we'll have a conversation about.
Thank you, David. I'm going to take 2 seconds just to say that actually a lot of our prevention work hangs off our health and wellbeing strategy. There's 5 key priorities, starting with stay strong, focus on prevention, strong communities, but also really importantly, joined up services. Actually, for us to start making sure that our services are together, they're seamless, and actually residents tell one story across the board. It would be remiss of me not to talk about neighbourhoods. just to say that we are in the process of piloting our integrated neighbourhood team, and we're doing that in the Morden borough, which is in the east of the borough. We are already populating what those teams look like, and the plan is to launch firstly in September the integrated neighbourhood team with a rapid rollout across the other neighbourhoods. There's 6 neighbourhoods in Merton. I just wanted to say something about the partnership in Merton. I think it's come a long way. Our Provider Alliance has all the partners in it, many of whom are around the table, and Vanessa is our Chief Place Officer. And that's the 6 neighbourhoods underneath. Place priorities, as well as frailty, and we are also looking at mental health. We are also looking at children and the prevention to ensure that actually it's not just a health priority, it is a joined up priority across all our partners. Last slide, I promise. I've just given you some strengths and challenges, and I didn't mark them separately, so it's up to you to kind of guess which is which. But actually, really strong partnership in the Alliance, real commitment to integrated neighbourhood team working from our local authority who are driving some of that work. We've got 2 outstanding practices. The only 2 outstanding practices across South West London are both in Merton. We've already got multidisciplinary teams, but we want to expand that and target that into those frail populations initially. As I said, launching that in September. The East-West divide. What the vision is that we actually have a hub in each of the East and the West. We've already got the West, we're in the Nelson, and that delivers things like outpatient appointments, diagnostics, phlebotomy. It's got voluntary sector contributions in it. We want to mirror that in the West, and one of our estates challenges, I've given it away, is thinking about the Wilson being that kind of site going forward. I wanted to mention really strong children's partnership and civic pride. The voluntary sector are really, really active in Merton, really strong, and we want to harness that in everything that we do. One of the challenges is that we don't have one acute site in the borough, so therefore many of our residents go to multiple hospitals, and so therefore we need to work with multiple partners there. And really importantly, we have significant health inequalities and disparities in the east of the borough. That really needs to be the focus of us going forward. I mentioned some long-standing estate developments which are well rehearsed, but particularly around the Wilson. And then finally, Borough of Sport, Wimbledon. It's the only borough really that has hundreds of thousands of people who have just left, but come into the borough to enjoy Wimbledon, but also it aligns to that Borough of Sport. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Oops, sorry, I've got to push my little button again, I'll get in trouble. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was really good. You covered an awful lot in a very short time, so thank you for that. And yes, sorry about the branding. I wasn't aware of the Borough of Sport, but I've learnt an awful lot in a very, very short time. So I'd have a couple of questions, but I do like to open it up to colleagues, first of all, for questions or for comments. Vanessa.
So I never knew that I was going to love Merton so much, but actually one of the things that is really palpable, I just wanted to say, is that sense of partnership. Because we don't have one large acute provider within it, it's a much flattened sense of an alliance, and the local authorities' place within that is really quite significant. It feels, as I serve 5 boroughs from a mental health perspective, it does feel very different, that connection from the local authority. And on the Borough of Sport, just a comment, connected to mental health and well-being, because this could make a huge difference. The prevalence review that is just about to come out, led by Peter Fogarty, is going to talk about the increased prevalence in children and young people in particular. And one of the things that it highlights around depression and anxiety is that sense of belonging. And if we could use and leverage sport as a sense of belonging in community, not for physical health and mental health, I think it could take us a long way.
Thank you, Masood.
This is great. You know, I grew up in...
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. This is great. I grew up in Morton, and in all honesty, activity was just limited to school. And my parents never got involved in kind of, these kind of activities. But now my mum's in Morton. She's over 80. And the one thing she's really lacking is physical activity, just going for walks, being with people and so on. I've got an aunt that goes for kind of community walks, but my mum, it's a struggle. What I was going to ask... listen, anything to get her out the house. She's obsessed with watching the chase. But what I was going to ask is that we talked about the East-West divide, and I think for me, looking at the kind of the aging well and the mental health side of things, do we know whether that East-West divide and how kind of sport plays a role, is it linked more to kind of the index of multiple deprivation? Is there a link to ethnicity? Because we've got a very diverse population, and sometimes we make assumptions. So do we know kind of how that fits? Because I think a number of, I'll be honest, a number of people from the South Asian community who are elderly really struggle with engaging. And so I'm wondering if there's a link there and what we might be doing.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with this, and we need to be more nuanced than just think it's a BME or an ethnically diverse issue, because it's finding the right activities to the right people. And one of the things I'm working really closely with Surrey Cricket at the moment is that South Asian community is one of the priorities for the ICB and Surrey Cricket. And alternative versions of cricket, I'm luckily still playing normal cricket, but walking cricket is getting bigger. There are a few clubs in the borough that are doing walking cricket, and there is a very high percentage of South Asian men particularly and women coming along to those. So I think it's getting that understanding, not just what you see through stats and desk research, is actually getting into those communities, and that's what we're doing more of. But hopefully, and this, don't share this outside the room, although it's quite a big room, the ECB sold their 100 franchise for many multi-million pounds to predominantly Indian companies recently. They're reinvesting that money back into facilities. I'm working with Surrey Cricket at the moment to get Surrey's main indoor all year round facility in Merton is my plan, and we're working on that, and that will be a regionally significant centre for Surrey Cricket. So fingers crossed on that one.
Can I just comment on this? Because I think this question of a sort of far more nuanced approach on these is one that I constantly come back to, whether it's here or in South East London as well. And there's never a silver bullet for these things, but one of the keys to this, as far as I can see, is really the engagement of the voluntary community sector, the local voluntary sector, not the big national things. And I just wondered, because you did mention about the sort of VCSE work in Merton, just about how you work with the voluntary community sector as well as local government on this.
Yeah, so actually later on we have an advisory group. So when I first started in Merton, recognised that we as a council can do very little on our own. So we have an advisory group that's made up of some of those key partners, from small little community groups all the way through to, we have All England Lawn Tennis Club on there. We have Merton School Sport Partnership. So there is an advisory group that hopefully the eyes and ears on the ground. It includes people like MenCap. So we're looking at some of our priority groups, girls and women, people with disabilities, ethnically diverse communities, and making sure those people that are advising me and my team and the council on bigger issues are, those people that are connecting locally. Now, there's always a journey to go on, but yeah, there's a meeting later on, and we meet quarterly. So, yeah.
I'd probably just add to that, just in terms of, so there is the borough of sport engagement with local community organisations, but certainly I'm looking at Lizzie and the comms team. We do a lot of engagement with our grassroots organisation about what's important to them, and we do that with the local authority. We want to further join that up, because the vision is actually do it together. But for instance, that has resulted previously in something called Beat the Street, which was basically a walking competition across the borough from schools to older people, and they had these tap things on lampposts. 26,000 people participated in that, and you got a prize if you were in the top 10. But older adults, there was 56% people who identified as being inactive, and we did that through the voluntary sector organisations about promoting it. So it's not just about cricket and tennis, etc. It is about walking from here to the lamppost, but it is also about listening to the organisations about what would work for their communities.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thanks for the presentation. It's really helpful. I'm 2 meetings into Sport London's advisory group, and I guess the bit I've taken from there was a different comparison with the VCSE, that the getting to grips with the market of providers of physical activity in each borough is a real challenge. So I don't suppose we've got time for it today, but if you cracked that, how do we spread it? If you've not cracked it, how can we work together on it? Because what I've taken is a huge amount of interest but provision, but it'd be big and small. So there was a lot of discussion about the same interaction with the VCSE. How do you get a positive interaction when you've got such a diverse group? Or, to be fair, I haven't researched it, perhaps we haven't got such a diverse group and we're giving up too easily.
So just very quickly, so we have a dedicated newsletter that's kind of the content is generated by my team. So if you're not connected already, Sports Leaders in Merton, and that is meant to be, grassroots information on funding, on opportunities for them to promote themselves, on how to connect with, wider opportunities that might not know about. And then in addition, twice a year we have a focused sports forum, which is very much for grassroots providers, where the council will do a little bit of an input, but it is around networking. Quite often these community groups think that, they've got so much on their plates, they've got so much to do, that they're on their own. Well, actually, connecting with other people that might have been there and done it before, they might have the expertise that they haven't got. Interestingly, I had a conversation with someone the other day for the Rotary, doing some fundraising, and, she was in her 80s. She said, I could really do with some help around social media. Now, I've got a 19-year-old girl who only does social media. That's her whole life is around social media. So I just said, to my daughter, do you want to? She wants to work in social media in the future and, brand awareness and all that. I said, why don't you go and help the Rotary Club with a campaign that's close to your heart? My daughter has ADHD, and, the Rotary are fundraising for Sport in Mind, a charity that work with people with mental health conditions. So, I said to my daughter, look, people have supported you in your sports journey. You are still on that journey, but why don't you give a bit of your expertise to, if we can kind of make that into a big package rather than just me connecting someone that I know. But hopefully the forum is that kind of ability for people to say, I've got this real challenge, or I've got this real opportunity, or I've got this real, great venue that's underutilised. And, doing that organically, working together is what we're trying to facilitate in Merton.
Okay, any questions from anyone else? I'm sure we'll come back to this again. I am conscious of time always on these, and there's a number of things actually I'd be really interested in coming back on. One of them is, which I haven't got time for that, but the role of some of the professional sports organisations as anchors around this as well. So I saw Wimbledon on there, a bit other places I've seen, Charlton and Bromley, and just really trying to get an idea about how we use some of those clubs. But I say I do have to move on at this point, and so unfortunately move on to what I described as the boring stuff, which is apologies to my colleagues that are going to present it on this. But thank you both very much for your time. It's really good to get these meetings starting off with something like that.
And if anyone wants a conversation that doesn't know what we want to do or what we're doing, or wants to find out more, I'm always happy to travel or come to Merton.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And we have copies of your impact report here, which colleagues will be able to pick up at the end. So thank you again very much. Okay, sorry for giving you this billing, Ben, but you're going to take us through the revised governance framework. We're going to be asked to approve the governance framework supporting governance documents, approve constitutional governance amendments set out in the papers. Whilst noting, I think, on these that some of these are still subject to approval at a national level by NHS England as well. But take us into it, Ben.
I'm going to be very upset if I can't live up to your expectations now, Richard. But firstly, I hope everybody enjoyed the 187 pages of governance joy. As the board has had the chance to discuss and review the overall governance framework and these documents on a number of occasions previously, you'll be very disappointed, Elaine, to learn that I'm not going to do a page turn of it as well, but I will take the majority of the documents as read and just give you an overview. So the refresh of the governance framework has been necessitated by the changes to ICBs that the government has put forward, and the changes to our structure are designed to enable us to deliver the accountabilities and responsibilities as set out in the Model ICB blueprint and the 10-year plan. The framework is intended to enable a clear, consistent, simple and proportionate way of delivering efficient and effective decision making, while also ensuring a strong accountability across the organisation. So as I noted, throughout the process we have provided updates to the board and had various conversations on the development of the framework, but I just wanted to note that we've also been discussing individual elements of the framework with non-executive members, the chairs of the committees and the relevant execs as we've been going along as well. And we also discussed the overall framework in detail at our last audit committee as well. So I'll just note a couple of other points then, please, Richard. The covering paper notes that we will have a transition committee as part of the overall framework, so that's to help us manage through the current change programme within the ICB. The committee met for the first time on Thursday. We finalised the draft terms of reference with the chair of that committee late on Friday, so they didn't make the deadline for inclusion in this pack. So if the board are happy, I will circulate those out of committee for approval, and then we will bring those back to the next meeting for noting. The framework has also been developed in conjunction with South East London as part of our clustering arrangement. So the framework as a whole is aligned across both organisations to make it easier for us to operate across both of those, with some exceptions for local variation and differences in operating models between the two organisations. We're also, I think this is an area Anne Rainsbury raised last time we met, we're also working on a close down and handover process for the current committees to make sure that we're capturing learning for those committees, any risks and issues on ongoing work, so that they can be transferred across to the new governance framework in the future as well. And then finally, I just wanted to note that we recognise that this is a starting position for the governance framework as well, and we are fully expecting that as we get into the ways of working and the new way of working on these committees, we will continue to develop and iterate and adapt this framework to ensure it's fit for purpose going forward. So, Richard, we're asking the board to approve the transition committee terms of reference out of committee, to approve the overall framework. Note that the framework will come in from the 1st of October, and also just noting that the constitutional amendments, small as they are, need to go up to NHS England for final approval as well.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. Now, so we have had some... Oh, sorry. I've got it again. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that, Ben. We have had a number of discussions both in session as a board and individually, and I guess I'd just add on this. We've created this partly because we are changing as an ICB, and once we moved to being a strategic commissioner, that necessitated a change. We have now the clustering arrangements with South East London, so that necessitated some degree of change. But as important, if not more important, I think the conversations I've had with a number of you individually about how does the board work, how do we make the organisation operate in a more effective way, I think has led to a number of changes. So hopefully we've tried to reflect all of those things in this sort of single package of documents. We've not been able to clearly get everyone's personal preferences into this, because occasionally they may well have been contradictory, but we have tried to get most of that in, and I'd commend the pact to you, and I think particularly the focus on ways of working as a board, which would be critical to our effectiveness in the future. But questions or comments from colleagues? Do you want to say anything as Chief Executive, Andrew?
I'll counter about it. I think this is one of the most intriguing board papers we've received. He says on his first proper board outing. So just to say, or to reiterate, no, actually, to contextualise. So two things seem important. We are embarking on 3 bits of work, of which this is one. So we've got, this is the sort of governance changes, but equally Ben is sort of helping me. We will engage in a bit of work to the same timescale, but with less sort of formality on a target operating model, so sort of how we do things around here. And then we know, and board members have reminded me of this sort of pretty much daily since I arrived, we've then got a big ways of working piece. So I think this is the written down, perhaps the duller end of that spectrum, things that we need to do, so I commend it to the board absolutely, but it does sit in the context of those 2 other things. So that was sort of one lens. The other lens is that we are changing, and some of those becoming a strategic commissioner is obviously critically important to this board. It does then mean we're relying on some other things. So I think you could read this paper and say, well, is this a downgrade of sort of partnership arrangements? Is it a downgrade of convening? Is this a downgrade of place? So this is about us, but we also have quite a significant piece of work about how do we interact with everybody else. So our place-based partnerships will be critically important. That's why we had Merton present today. Yeah. We will have next week the first meeting of our Systems Sustainability Group, which effectively brings together the chief executives of all of our providers with my senior team and with colleagues from the local authority to look at how our system's sustainable. We just don't succeed as commissioners and the rest of the system goes to pot, or vice versa. So just to amplify those things that are not here but are kind of relied upon alongside this documentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Now I've got Neil and I've got Vanessa, I think, and I've got Masood. So Neil, you first.
Thanks, Richard. Just to flag that we may need to tweak the operationalisation of the scheme of delegation. I think having a read through, there are probably some bits and pieces. So I think subject to the board being happy, we'd suggest taking those through the Audit and Risk Committee for approval. I think it wouldn't change the main thrust of the scheme of delegation.
Okay, I think on any of these, we will, as they go through committees, there will be amendments potentially that will have to come back then for formal agreement to the board, but perfectly happy with that, Neil. Vanessa.
Thank you, and I appreciated the email of forever hold your peace. So I sent in my comments, but I now need to make sure I don't hold my peace, if you like. So two comments. The first was on the Neighbourhood Strategic Delivery Committee. I note that mental health isn't represented on that committee, and I think that's an oversight. So could we agree that going forward, mental health, or in that committee, mental health can have a representative? It's page 165 of the pack. Yeah, and then the second was in relation to the Strategic Commissioning Committee. I'd just like to get clarification of how mental health again will be truly represented, because I note that there is place representation there, and there are a number of other people, but to date that. People haven't represented mental health fully through the ICB structures, which has led to some of the challenges that we have. And I'd just like to get some assurance around how that will be addressed, either through representation from myself or through ensuring somebody else has full responsibility for making sure that's delivered.
So, can I look to Andrew to comment on that first of all before anyone else? Andrew.
Just on the neighbourhood bit, I think I'd agree. So it'd be my simple comment, but I defer to Ben if there's been a sort of a dialogue and there's a different view on that. So I think that's absolutely right. On the Strategic Commissioning Committee, however, this is probably going to fall into our ways of working, because we are reliant upon our commissioning infrastructure, and Jonathan may want to talk about how that's playing out to make sure that we have an MDT approach, but also commissioning focus on all of the population groups brought to that committee. So we are going to be relying on our Chief Commissioning Officer and on the team to bring that through the agendas. I hadn't really thought of it in terms of representation in that way. I had thought of it in terms of what is the business of that committee. So will it give due attention to parity of esteem? Will it give due attention to mental health? And I'm confident that we will do that, and the board should hold us to account for that. So the first one's really quite simple. I do think question for us, perhaps outside of the board, if it's okay, Chair, is about whether that is clinical or executive, or what type of representation it represents. But in terms of the SCC, I think there's a different answer to that.
Okay, so I'm happy with that. Is that okay? Because I think that I'm happy with that. If other people are, and I think there is a sort of general question often with us on these things, and we've been through it in other forums about whether the best way of ensuring a proper focus on an area is by having a representative of that area, or the sort of ways you work. And I think what Andrew is suggesting, it's sort of both, depending on which the areas it is. Sorry, Jonathan, do you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, just because Andrew was inviting me to sort of comment on that, I think worth noting that, as Andrew said, we're trying to develop the sort of cross-functional way of working and the multidisciplinary team way of working that will help deliver perhaps a greater emphasis than we've had on the past on mental health. And also we have plan to appoint 2 senior commissioning roles, one which will be exclusively focused around mental health of the 4 areas that we prioritise, and those will have delivery groups that will feed into the strategic commissioning committee. So I just want to reassure Vanessa that there's an absolute focus on mental health going forward in our plans this session.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Masood, it's like everyone's lights are on down this side.
It's all gone red. The first point I think has been covered by Vanessa, and the involvement and representation for mental health. And the second point, I was just going to make just a comment and a thank you. I think we've given Ben and the team a fairly hard time in terms of ensuring that as we cluster, we bring in best practice, we develop and change things as needed for our new roles. So thank you to him and the team.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, Ben. As I warned you all, I would struggle to remember to put my mic on, and it has now got to the stage where the gentleman at the back has to come and see me. Hello. But thank you very much for that. So I think we have all the approvals necessary for you, Ben, and with the amendment that will specifically look on the neighbourhood side at mental health representation. Okay. No other comments on this, in which case we shall move on to the annual report and accounts. Now, is this you, Ben, or is this Neil? It's Ben first. Okay, Ben.
Thank you very much, Richard. Neil and I are going to do a double act on this, so I'll take the annual report, and Neil will take you through the annual accounts. You definitely wouldn't want that the other way around. So as the board will remember, sign-off of the annual report and accounts was to get delegated to the audit committee this year, and the audit committee met in June to sign those off, and they were subsequently submitted to NHS England. So we're bringing them here today to meet our requirements to present them at a public board before the 30th of September. The report and the annual accounts are available in full on our website and have been produced in accordance with the Health and Social Care Accountability Manual. You can view both of them by using the link in the pack or going directly onto the website. For ease of reading, we will be producing a summary document of the annual report, which will be up on our website shortly, but the welcome section of the report provides a good summary of the ICB's activities throughout this year. So this year the annual report is written to reflect the new direction of travel for the NHS, or ICBs, relating to the 10-year plan and the 3 shifts, as well as our future role as strategic commissioners within that. It's also worth noting that NHS England use the report as a principal source of evidence for their statutory assessment of ICBs each year. So the report also includes detailed responses to a number of key lines of inquiry that we know NHS England will be asking us. And at that point, I'll hand over to Neil for the accounts.
Thanks, Ben. So just to flag then the key headlines from the actual account. So all the ICB financial targets were met in 25-26. There were no unadjusted errors in the audit findings report. and there were also no adjustments that we needed to make to the ledger from the draft accounts to the final version. The auditors didn't make any further new recommendations, although we do need to follow up on a couple of the recommendations from last year in relation to contract signing and the Section 75 agreements. Both of those are already in train, and we're confident that they will be addressed for this year. And sitting alongside the audit findings report, the audit committee were happy to approve the accounts, which therefore brought a successful end to the 25-26 financial year with all the targets being met. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything any colleagues want to add on those, or any questions for people? I mean, just for the avoidance of any doubt, the accounts were with a clean audit opinion, unqualified, tickety-boo from the auditor's point of view. Yeah. Bob.
Well, in the context of that, I suppose, as chair of the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee, I should say for the record that the annual report was reviewed. We were comfortable that it, recognising completely a lot of what goes in an annual report is dictated by NHS England, but those bits that we had discretionary input, it was balanced, it was fair, it was accurate. The auditors confirmed any statistics, numbers therein were an accurate record of what had happened. The accounts again are hugely predetermined by national body. They were completed well. The auditors were very complimentary about both their completion and their accuracy. It was a very clean audit opinion from the externals. It was a positive head of internal audit opinion on controls and assurance. And as Neil said, there was very little for the externals to comment on, other than, and here's a couple of things we asked you to do and you're still doing them, but we're comfortable that you're going to have completed them within a time scale. So it was a straightforward audit and accounts review, albeit a very complex and complete set of documents, and we submitted on time, as Neil has said.
Okay, thank you very much. Andrew, were you raising your hand?
Well, just to follow Bob, then, having come into post sort of in that financial year, it is in a context of an interesting year for staff and professionals that work for the ICB. So I think pretty much everything thrown at the team, from changes to comings and goings, including CFO leadership and so on and so forth. So I would just sort of usually say thank you and well done. I think particularly this year in that context, it's a big thank you and well done.
And if Ben and Neil, you could take back on behalf of the board thanks to the finance and governance teams on this. It's the sort of thing that is not always appreciated, but is essential to our proper operation. So thank you both, and thank you your teams. Okay, in which case we then move on to the board committee updates and reports. I think we're starting off with you again, Neil, is that correct?
You are, for the Finance and Planning Committee update. So just to say, the committee met on the 27th of May, and to note this was the last formal Finance and Planning Committee whilst we launched the new governance. We had a close-off of the month 12 finance system position. There was also an update on the month 1 ICB reports, which was in a very high level, but also an update on the medium-term plan, which was really around looking at the development of the 10-year plan and how we realise the benefits of it. A progress on the contracts in terms of agreements, and also the status of the Strategic Investment Fund. Also, we noted and commented on the new governance structure, which you've obviously just been through, which involved the handover of outstanding items for the Finance Committee and where it will end up moving on to. So that concludes the committee update.
Thank you. Any questions for Neil on the Finance and Planning Committee? No, in which case I hand back to you again, Neil, for the finance report, and we will let you off soon, don't worry.
Thank you. So yeah, the month 2 position. So again, I'll take the report as read. It is a very early time of the year, so there are data flows which aren't even flowing at the moment, plus very limited data around acute. But I would also just like the board to note that all the acute contracts are now agreed. We do have an efficiency plan in place, and we are expected to hit that target of £33 million. We are reporting on plan year to date and at year end. But I think the one risk I would like to flag is around the right to choose providers, which I think was a common theme through last year. It represents a risk at the beginning of this year, but we have put measures in place around some new pathways which should manage that position in a more controlled way. So I think that is the one risk I would flag at this very early stage.
Okay, thank you. And given where we are now in the year, I know it's not part of the formal report, Q1 numbers, anything different there?
No, all pretty much along the same lines. It's the right to choose, which is generally the area that's still cause of concern, but at the moment controlled and in line with the plan.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Neil on the finance report? Bob?
It's not a question, but it's an observation, and I'll probably do sound like a crack record on this. But this year in particular, it does strike me that our focus on being as accurate in our forecasting and our response to what those forecasts are telling us seems absolutely key. And the things that strike me from this report, when I was at the committee, and I might have said it then, I genuinely can't remember, is the right to choose provider piece. By completely, there'll be a focus on that, I have no doubt. The thing that still is a little frustrating, I suppose, is the extent to which some of our actual expenditure is still predicated on getting information flows from other places that seem remarkably tardy, given the fact we know there's both price and usage volatility attached to them. So the whole bit about at what point do pharmacy actuals start to come through rather than pharmacy accruals. We know there's issues on drug pricing. You're not quite sure how that lands in timing. The very fact that we've got favourable variance showing because agreements in another place haven't been made, and you don't know quite when that's going to drop or what that will do. So I just wonder, is there nationally anything that's going on about trying to speed up the time at which very important information relating to financial control and de-risking of positions is going to happen? Because, I mean, frankly, the pharmacy lag seems to have been with us since I were a lad doing it. And you'd think there was a chance it would get better and quicker. So it's more an observation, but it's an issue I think as we go through the year we'll want to be a bit more, we'll want to be as focused on as possible.
I suspect the pharmacy one is in the nature of the contract still, Bob, because it was from there when I was a lad as well. But Neil.
So I think on the pharmacy prescribing, I think usually we do tend to get information of price changes or increases that may come further down the line, but I do recognise it's a bit generic, it's a bit sort of national, and our slice of that, or what the impact for us is, difficult to predict. But I do recognise it is a problem, and given 3 months into the year is the first time we see any data coming through, and then you can't do any forecast based on that. So I do recognise that, but I think I'll take that away and think about how we can maybe do some forecasting that doesn't rely on national data sets coming through.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the finance report? No, I cannot see any, in which case I shall move on to you, Masood, as Chair of Quality and Performance Oversight, and we'll follow then with Elaine on the quality report and Jonathan on the performance report.
Thank you, Chair. So the Quality and Performance Oversight Committee have met once since the last meeting. Elaine and Jonathan will respectively go over and provide updates around quality and performance. Two things I would like to mention. One is that we had an update around the neighbourhood health and care strategy. And I think that's important because, one, I'm not sure we're all on the same page yet in terms of what a neighbourhood is and how that's going to develop. But I would like to say that the team are doing a lot of work and progressing towards that kind of integrated model. And Croydon is acting as a pilot site to inform us more widely across South London in terms of how we develop that. I think the second is the NHS England draft oversight framework. And that was presented to the committee because it introduced 38 population-focused metrics, and that will require embedding across our organisation in terms of planning, performance and risk management. And if there are no questions or comments, I'll hand over to Elaine.
Can I just, sorry, could I just, are you going to pick up, Jonathan, on the oversight framework in your report? And if you're not, because Masood raised it, is it worth making some comments now?
I wasn't going to specifically pick up on it, but happy to comment now if that would be helpful.
I think
Chair.
it'd just be helpful for board members just to get a bit of an understanding of it.
Yes.
And
so
just how that will work with us.
So the National Oversight Framework is evolving. It has been there for trusts for a number of years and is going to be reinstated for ICBs from now moving forward. As Masood has indicated, the numbers are changing slightly between various drafts, but there's around 38 population and often quite population health focused metrics that ICBs will need to focus on. It will lead to quarterly updates on our performance as an ICB. Against many of those metrics, in common with many ICBs across the capital, you can imagine that some of them will be quite challenging. Some of them are new measures where we don't yet have data sources, and some of them will be familiar to us and we recognise our position well. So I think our senior management team has just recently received a sort of initial assessment of where we are against those metrics, and there was further work required flowing from that. Probably appropriate to bring it as soon as things are published to share with board members, either as a separate paper or through the Chief Executive's update.
Okay, thank you. Do you anything you want to say about this, Andrew? And I guess particularly from the board's perspective, about the implications of being in different segments of the oversight framework?
Certainly, so not dissimilar to trusts, well actually maybe dissimilar to trusts, but so there's a rating 1 through 4, 1 being the highest rating, 4 being the lowest rating. The reason I pause on the trust, I think you can be a 5 in the trust world, so you're extra specially special. So, okay, and I'm not clear, Jonathan, correct me, that exists for ICBs. I think we're a 1 to 4.
You're quite right. We're a 1 to 4 ratio, 1 being good, 4 somewhat less so.
Yes, that's important because it drives the level of regulatory intervention and the degree to which we will receive support and or further external scrutiny on our position. So the first thing to say, just to be clear, I think it's as it sounds. If you're in 1 and 2, then that is a light touch, low level oversight and additional scrutiny. 3, it begins, and I think predominantly at a regional level, and 4 is the full shooting match. I think is the expression with national. What we don't quite yet understand, and I think a lot of this is emergent, is what that support and scrutiny looks like. So just so I think that is clearer for trusts, it is less clear for ICBs. That's the first thing to say. Secondly, I'm expecting that we will have a publication of the first outcomes in late August. There will, interestingly, be the old regime, I think, will provide an output for last year, but that will be a narrative output and it won't involve a rating or otherwise. So essentially, though I don't wish to refer to league tables particularly, you will have a league table of ICBs amongst those segments, and that was how it will look and feel. A couple of other things, if it's okay, Chair. There will be the temptation, and certainly I will have a strong temptation, to look at those specific 38 indicators and what we are doing. The first reflection of our entire exec team, and same is true of South East London's exec team, is that they will be the things that our group of people have placed importance on, and they're important things. We have a far wider interest in what we are seeking to measure, so we will need to balance those two things off. As you know, Chair, a believer in a licence to operate, so we need to be, in my view, very fixated on what this says, but not lose sight of the other parts of the business. And then I think just to shape the board's expectation, it is quite clear, given some of the measures and given history, and that history will not change because of the new framework, that a number of those areas will present a challenge, particularly to inner city or more deprived communities in London and other metropolitan areas, because they will relate to uptake of things like vaccinations and immunisations. We don't need this framework to come through to tell us that they are already challenged areas for our populations. So I think, and given that I understand those to be quite heavy drivers of the ratings, we can expect that to then have a consequence in the NOF or National Oversight Framework area that we end up in. I think, final thing, Jonathan, correct me, but when we were looking at this, just to give board members a feel, with the 38, sometimes 41 indicators, I think around 16 of those are still in some way to be determined, or we don't have access to the data otherwise. So we have been seeking to second guess this, but in actual fact it feels like slightly something of a fool's errand, because you don't have the full picture until you've got the full picture.
Just to concur, that's exactly the case, and I'd also reiterate Andrew's point about it's obviously an important lens and a lens by which ICBs will judge, but from a board perspective there are many other measures and metrics that will be also important too.
And just again, so for the avoidance of any doubt, this is a relative thing. These are not absolute measures. These are relative measures between ICBs, or is it?
So I think in many instances they are absolute measures, but then they feed an
into
aggregation
a relativity about
in relative performance.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Okay, now I spent a bit of time on that because I think it's important for board members to understand this and this not to come as a shock. First publication, end of August. Andrew, we will arrange separate sessions for the boards of our organisations on these.
So essentially it's a whole new process. So the indication is the end of August. Just again to shape expectations, I don't know if this is something I'll receive midnight the night before and then we read about it in the journal, or something that will have a bit of a lead in and we can then have board interaction, and I would hope for the latter. Obviously there will be an oddity because you will before then get something that relates to the year gone, and it will be a different framework with a different statement about what we're in, and that's by and large narrative.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it was worth spending a little bit of time on that. But I am going to turn to Elaine now on the quality report.
Thank you, Chair. I will take the report as read, noting that operational pressures continue across all our provider organisations, and I've been in the NHS for hundreds of years, and at this time of year my experience was always that operational pressures had started to reside somewhat, and that colleagues and our patients could enjoy some of the pleasant weather and it was not so busy. However, that is not the case. We are seeing significant operational pressures which will impact on performance, of course, but patient experience and quality, in particular around the urgent emergency care, mental health, corridor care, etc. So we continue to support provider colleagues with those issues. You'll note in the report updates in terms of recent Never events and the shared learning continued work that our provider organisations do on that. You'll note the South West London pathology FIT incident, the harm review is ongoing, and at the point of quality committee and the report's been written. The interstitial lung disease issue at Epsom St Helier Trust, the external report review has now been published, and there is ongoing work at Epsom St Helier on that piece of work, and they have communicated out about that. Maternity services, obviously, colleagues will know, nationally continues, and rightly so, to receive much scrutiny in terms of recent Ockenden and Amos reports, and we continue to support and work with our provider organisations as they start to digest those reports and work through the 100-day action plans and priorities for that. Safeguarding continues to be a challenge. There are considerable safeguarding risks and challenges across South West London for our young and vulnerable people, and the teams work hard with partners to be able to support those. Talking of oversight frameworks, we're starting to see more guidance in terms of quality oversight in the new world of strategic commissioners, and what that will mean in terms of clarity about roles and responsibilities for quality and patient safety in our new world. And we still await the imminent publication of the National Quality Strategy, which again is quite clear in terms of roles and responsibilities for ICBs and regional teams and provider organisations.
Thank you. Questions from colleagues? Just a national quality strategy, when's that expected?
Dare I say, the National Quality Strategy, we have been promised from a CNO perspective since February or March time.
So it is imminent?
Obviously, change in leadership. It's on the Secretary of State's desk, we are told, but it's been imminent for some months.
Okay, thank you.
No question at all, Chair, but just to advertise. So clearly we've had, and it's in the reports later on, the organisation report, we've had maternity reviews, both Amos and Ockenden, in very recent weeks. So that has not escaped our attention. That will come back to the board, both informally, in private and in public, in future meetings. The timings of those reports are such that they just come just before paper distribution, so it's not an omission or we've somehow missed this in really, really important area. So,
thank you, Andrew. Jonathan.
Yes, so on to the sort of performance lens, and unsurprisingly there'll be a lot of mirroring with what Elaine has already highlighted from a quality point of view. But starting in the positive space, just to allude to the previous conversation, our vaccination rates, as are in the report, are the best in London in a number of areas, so that's good to see. There's obviously more work, but it's good to see that. The paper sets out our position on planned care really clearly. Trust did a very good job of improving at the end of the year their long waiter position, so people who waited more than a year for treatment, and were ahead of trajectory at the end of the year after being behind it throughout. So that remains the best position in London, and also really good to see that the diagnostic aspect of the pathway, which has been somewhat challenged in the last year, significant improvement in performance at the end of the last financial year, as well as for our population with severe mental illness, physical health checks, and improvement in timely delivery of those at the end of last financial year too. So those are some strengths. And then in the area of challenge, I would entirely agree with what Elaine's just highlighted around the ongoing nature of pressures on our urgent emergency care pathways. That hasn't really abated through the summer period. You can see that in things like 4-hour access to care, people who spend more than 12 hours on a trolley before being admitted to a hospital bed. Both remain very challenged indicators. It applies to physical and to mental health as well. You can see the challenges around mental health, emergency access continuing, and we can continue to develop our plans around how we respond to those through a mental health delivery group that we've just established around urgent emergency care. But that bodes a significant challenge for I know we're in the height of summer and thinking about how hot it is at the moment, but it does pose a significant challenge for the coming winter period as we normally see some improvement in those indicators. So those would be some things to call out from the report, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. And just on the RTT and diagnostics, sustainability of improvement? Question mark.
I think, I think we've seen significant improvements at the end of last financial year, which has been sustained into quarter one. We're not seeing growths in waiting lists or referral volumes. So that doesn't in any way negate the immense amount of work that goes into sustaining those positions and delivery on those positions. Obviously good that some parts of the NHS around industrial action, that's come to an end, which will help, but there are new areas where it might well emerge, and that will then present challenges on planned care pathways potentially. But this is an area that a long way to go to deliver the asks set out in the 10-year plan for the NHS, but at least an area where South West London's in a good position on which to build.
Thank you, Jonathan. Questions for Jonathan or comments on the report? Andrew?
Well, Chair, I think for this ICB and for others, we did have sort of discussion with national colleagues about increasing referral rates in the first 2 months of the year. And so just to note that would not come through in these reports here, but that's something we've actually asked the team to look into. And I think that will, quite aside from our own interest in it, will be a sort of a national interest, because that sort of puts at risk then the waiting list growth and otherwise. And that's not about the sustainability of our approach, that's about whether there is or isn't a felt change in the level of activity that we are seeing. I think, in fairness to Jonathan, I don't think we know that yet for South West, but perhaps we do. But
well, from there's probably more work to do, and these trends can change, but we haven't seen that in aggregate across South West London. We haven't seen a significant change in referral patterns in the first couple of months in the year. But that then does hide some variability. So, for example, there has been some growth in Croydon, but it's difficult to extrapolate a trend based on 1 month's data. So we're continuing to just keep firmly focused on understanding the position, but obviously, as Andrew rightly points out, the inputs into the process will have an impact on timely access if the inputs increase, but that's not what we've seen so far, and our waiting lists remain stable at around 200,000.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Now, Audit and Risk Committee, I don't know whether that is going to be Neil or Bob.
Well, I'll do it as I chaired it. And we've dealt with an awful lot of it because the predominance of the meeting was the statutory documents, and I've already spoken about those. The only other two things that came through were, one of which is clear in the update report, which is our ongoing view of transition risk and the assurances we get. Clearly, a lot of that's obviated by the creation of the Joint Transition Board that Ben spoke about in the governance framework. Clearly, the two things there are: one, make sure we don't duplicate effort of assurance, such that officers aren't having the same conversation in two different places, and secondly, that we we, from a statutory authority position, feel that we're getting the width of assurance through that process. But that we'll just deal with that. The second thing, and this will, I think, become clearer around a board table over time, is, and I think comes back to your point, which is where Anne had spoken about the need to close down, learn and move into the new piece. The creation of a new board assurance framework, and the very interesting conversation that will happen about risks that continue, but as our role changes, how we define that risk and how we then mitigate against it and get assurance of the controls around that will also slightly change. But that's a developing piece of work. We just recognise it's something that officers are on top of, and we'll come back to it.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I recognise a lot was covered up on the accounts and reports around. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Neil?
No, that's all.
That's super. I've got one thing to add, which is just the... as we've introduced a sort of cluster arrangement between South East and South West, and we will have a number of joint staff, particularly around the sort of finance and controls area, we have both South East London and South West London, they've got the same external auditor and the same internal auditor. And it would be good for the two audit committees just to look at, I guess, how we could maybe make the audit process more efficient, aka cheaper, as we sort of move into this clustered arrangement, because there must be a way of both sets of external auditors, both sets of internal auditors are looking at essentially the same set of controls across two separate statutory orgs. So it'd be good if the two audit committees together could maybe look at that for us. Yeah, I think it's the same internal and same external auditors.
Yeah, I mean, we did touch on this a little bit. I suspect the alignment around internal audit could be more straightforward, where you're looking at either things you have to do as part of your audit plan. So why wouldn't you follow the same process, the same time frame? Inevitably, you still will want to differentiate based on the risk positions of the two bodies, but that's a legitimate piece. The externals, yes, of course, we'll explore a lot of the process will be the same. We will still need to be absolutely clear that we want to maintain the wall between two separate statutory authorities that might have actually some common transactions, in which case you'd need to declare them anyway, but you'd still want to look at them from sort of two different lenses. But having that alignment conversation, absolutely, Richard, we'll deal with that.
Thank you. Sorry.
Well, just on the external audit, I'm aware that their team is a completely different team, so I recognise that operationally the external audit may have some issues, but that won't stop us exploring where there could be opportunities for them and us to explore. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So, on the committee's final report, Masood on the Remuneration Committee.
Thank you, Chair. So since the last update, the committee has met 3 times to discuss things like senior pay, organisational change, the voluntary redundancy scheme, and approved 1 item outside the committee by email.
Okay. Thank you. Clearly, with the change process, been quite busy in terms of individual cases. Any questions for Masood or comments? No, in which case, can I say that the board notes each of the committee reports, and we move on to our final substantive item, which is the organisation report. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So if we take the report as read, although I do want to make just a slight addition, not amendment, addition to the report, and I wanted to amplify a couple of things. So just amplify those things first. So the report starts off, as I've mentioned, with Ockenden and Amos reports having come out recently. Can I make a suggestion through you, Chair, that we did receive a national letter with a sort of 10-point emergency or immediate action plan in response to those reports, and I just want the letter of the 30th from national leaders just be circulated to board members. It's to that and related outcomes that we will respond. I should note within that, that is a 10-point action plan for England. So there are things in there for the regulators to do. There's a lot, as you could imagine, for providers to do. And in addition to that, it does invite commissioners to be absolutely clear that we have got the right set, portfolio and quality of services that fits our population. So given that you've got everything in there from quality to safety of frontline services through to staffing, through to actually do you have the right setup and system responsive to your communities. These are the things that commissioners will need to become sort of directly involved in. So I just wanted to make sure that we absolutely highlight that area. Secondly, just to say we just some points from the report, not the entire report. I did want to just talk about the impact of our management of change process. So firstly, to the thank yous. So our SRO for the programme is Ben Luscombe. I think to say there are Herculean efforts going across the organisation to make sure this is done in a efficient and respectful and empathetic way, given that we have redundancies and we talk about people's livelihoods. It is a huge undertaking. It's one that also has consequences. So I think in any given week we are putting a huge amount of management and executive resource into issues that allow this very complex process to play out, and that then has an impact. So I noticed colleagues from here in the audience, Rishi, for example, and we have become over that period, I think, less externally focused than we would like, and that runs right through the executive, right through to all bands in the organisation. Thankfully, I think the end is in sight. We have been in a position where we were able about 2.5 weeks ago to give all of our staff a letter formally setting out the individual circumstance for them, be that they slot into a role, that they're about to go through a process that might result in a different role or indeed might result in a redundancy. And so we are onto that stage of things, and whilst to give certainty absolutely for some people, it then gives a different type of anxiety and uncertainty for others. So we are very mindful of that process. The report, again, celebrates some appointments that we have made to the executive team, and that's fantastic. I won't read out those individuals, and of course one of them is around the table. So welcome back, or you have to stay, whichever expression you like. So congratulations. I guess what it also then says is that those people are not here. So even in the case of Elaine, we have seconded arrangements to play out, so the exec team gets sort of in place properly from the sort of September through October period, and clearly we look forward to being up to full complement in doing that. So just to call out some of those impacts that come along the way. And then I just thought I would, since I attended it, and I'm sure Vanessa will not mind this in the slightest, just flag the Mental Health and Health Inequalities Conference that was held. I'm new to South West London, so I don't quite know what to expect when one turns up to these events. Packed to the rafters would be one thing to say, energetic another, but I think it sort of underlines it's not just Vanessa that is championing these issues. There is a whole army of people who want to see parity of esteem and inequality focus. So I did get to present at that forum. I think it's really worthy of note, and I'm glad we called it out in the paper. Other events are available. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew.
Apologies, Chair. My addition. As we did equally, we were very aware. So clearly, it is a issue that sits with one of our providers, but a significant one at the moment. So St Helier's issues with women's health estates. So just for the purposes of today, just to be clear, the ICB notes the work of colleagues to deal with issues to relocate women's services due to estate issues at the St Helier site. And so that's to be clear. But equally, we recognise that position that the Trust does not wish to be in, and we need to give them the time and space to work through whether those services could be housed on the site to deal with those issues. And as soon as we are aware of that, then of course we need to make a response and play our role. Our role will be to assure those plans, to make sure that we continue to support the trust, but also to support women and families in the local area in terms of impacts for them, and also to make sure that we are mindful of the wider system. So in terms of any impact on any one service of our providers, there will also be an impact on neighbouring trusts, but also neighbouring boroughs and populations. And of course we will pay attention to the full gambit of that. So because it's not in the papers, but because it's a significant issue for our patch, just want to raise it here, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew, anything he said or anything within his report? No? Is there any other business? Which I should have probably asked at the start of the meeting, but apologies because I didn't. But I cannot see any. In which case, I think we've sort of reached the end of our formal business. And we started off, I thought, with a really good session from Merton, and I hope we can sort of mirror that in future meetings for our other boroughs. We did quite a sort of deep dive then into our internal workings of the organisation, I think which starts to set us up well for the future. But as Andrew said, that's part of a whole suite of work that covers target operating model, ways of working and organisational development. We've cleared off the accounts, and well done to all the teams for the accounts reports, and we've been through the committee meetings. We have, I think as Andrew said, been quite internally focused today, and quite internally focused around sort of change within the organisation for perhaps too long. I think our view, our clear ambition is now we've got these building blocks in place, now we're getting the team in place, we can really start to motor on the external focus as we start from our meetings in early autumn. So that's my hope and expectation. At which point we do open up to public questions. Now we give priority to questions issued in advance. Now first of all I want to check whether anybody that asks the two questions in advance is actually here in the room or not. So you are, sorry. Right, okay Jeffrey, so you asked the question specifically around neighbourhoods then and Wandsworth.
The ongoing issue about funding and budget expectations.
Okay, Jonathan, can you lead off on that for us?
Yes, thank you very much, Jeffrey, for the questions. So what I'd start by saying is that many budget lines are already out there for things like virtual wards and primary care, locally commissioned services, just to give you two illustrations, and they're a core part of what we're providing in neighbourhoods, and they're already commissioned by us, and there are contracts in place with a range of providers and partners to support the delivery of those, and many boroughs have already begun to develop some neighbourhood infrastructure. I'm thinking about things like care coordinators and proactive anticipatory care work that we're building on through our frailty model, and that includes in Wandsworth, which your question relates to. So those are already in place. We are waiting further clarity nationally on contracting models for 27/8 and about how they will interface effectively around neighbourhood health. And we are also working to develop a medium-term financial strategy for the ICB, which will support the shift of resources into the neighbourhood setting going forward. Also worth mentioning, we have pump-primed each place with additional resource to support the development of the neighbourhood models. There's a range of services, for example, in one borough, for example, a GP liaison officer being appointed between the trust and the neighbourhood team to support joint working and patients not falling through any gaps between primary and secondary care. So hopefully that gives a sense of where we are. There's also a report which very happy to provide the link to, written across the capital, outlining for the last year what progress has been made on in terms of setting up neighbourhoods across London. So hopefully that gives a flavour of where we are and the work that's ongoing, building on what's already in place, but also mindful for what's to come through national guidance.
So can I just add from a finance perspective on this, the financial strategy that Jonathan referred to. Andrew and I had a meeting with the finance team yesterday around this medium-term financial strategy. And what we're keen to get to, and to get to a very clear picture on, is two things is specifically from the sort of allocative side of the money. The first one is how our spend starts to move between what I'd refer to as points of delivery, whether it's sort of hospitals, community, primary care. So how our share of spend will shift over time to reduce the spend in hospitals and to increase the spend in community and primary care. So what we want to get to is an agreed path as an ICB that shows that quite explicitly. So we're not just living in hope about some of the left shift side. So our aim will be to come back to the board probably in the early autumn on that before we get into the planning round of, well, what's that shift there? And at the same time, the other question that we've been asking is the balance of spend between our different places geographically in south-west London. So what we want to get to is, again, a clear picture of how does the balance of spend by borough match against perceived need by borough at the same time as how do we sort of shift delivery, the point of delivery on this. And both of those I'd like to see us coming back over probably a 3 to 5 year period in the autumn. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Andrew.
I need to say, I mean, maybe it's behind the question, we do want to get to a point where place-based budgets would be a meaningful part of our system if we're to achieve this left shift and so on and so forth. Then we are interested in what units we are doing it at. But otherwise, yes, the two main points around the medium-term financial strategy are important. As a strategic commissioner, one of our key tools is allocative arrangements. So where we spend the money is what we'll become deeply interested in, and it being aligned to need is critically important to that.
Okay, and we will record the answers clearly on the papers as well that we publish. We had another question from the Wandsworth Patient Forum around water testing. Is there anyone here?
It was a... I think the question spoke for itself.
Okay.
There was a very nasty incident down in Gloucester, which I won't go into because you've got the thing, but obviously it focused, or the coroner focused, a number of questions, which really is for a countrywide issue.
Yeah. Okay, so we will record the answer on page, but Elaine, did you want to say something briefly on this?
Yes, thank you. Just to say that all the trusts have a statutory responsibility in terms of water safety, but the South West London providers are all compliant with the HSE approved code of practice, and they all regularly have water safety audits. They have regular mechanisms in place to test that water, and we are assured of the governance structures that they have, where they pick up any issues and how they manage those and how that's reported.
Okay. Yeah, by all means.
That is obviously somewhat reassuring, but it obviously failed drastically in Cheltenham. Obviously, there was pointed out that the relevant committees hadn't met to meet their requirements. So can we be assured that the committees in this ICB, or the committees somewhere down the channel, have actually met their requirements?
it was a very tragic case in Gloucester, and we are assured that the South West London providers do have committees and do adhere to their safety measures.
So they don't just have these sort of policies in place, they are operating to them. We are assured on that. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, I'll just check to make sure I can see everybody. If not, then I will close the meeting and thank you all for your time and attendance. Thank you.